All right, this is the first part of the seminar I hosted in Ireland this last week, where I'm going to get into the most important thing that you need to do if you want to make Conjugate work as a raw powerlifter. That is, making sure that what you're doing is specific to your needs. Because Conjugate won't have a ton of competition squat, bench, and deadlift practice, but if we ensure that the lifts that we are doing address our skill and strength deficiencies and have carryover back to the main lifts, we can make it work way better than just jamming out on competition SBD volume. The full lecture is going to be posted in the team, which is free for the first 7 days, so hit the link below to check it out, get daily individualized coaching from me, and access a program that lays out exactly what you need to be doing while getting support from the entire community as you go. Anyways, let's get into the seminar. So let's get into it and figure out how to make Conjugate work better for raw powerlifting. And the first thing that we need to do is address what is Conjugate, because the idea that so many lifters have of Conjugate is kind of based around a lot of the raw gyms that say they train Conjugate. They're always doing sat back box squats. They're always running bands and chains. They're always focusing on posterior chain, ignoring quads. And the reason I like to talk about that is that was the definition of Conjugate that I was introduced to. And all of those things are things that can be used in Conjugate, but that's not what we really need to think about, because if we're only thinking about box squats, we're only thinking about sitting back, we're only thinking about board presses and triceps and ignoring everything else, it's not going to work the best for a raw powerlifter, because that isn't really what we need to be doing. Because what we need to be doing is thinking about what the lifter needs the most when they are training in that given session, in that given block, in that given year-long period, because your definition Conjugate will shift over time as you progress as a lifter, as weak points change, as things get better. And like, I do have guys that I have doing wide sat back box squats pretty damn regularly. I do have almost all of my lifters, I like them running board presses, but I'm not having them run the board presses or run the box squats because they have to do that for Conjugate. I'm having them do that because it is what they need to be doing in order to build up what they actually need to be building. And that really is the whole thing that I'm trying to get to when I talk about Conjugate. My keyboard is unreliable at getting the slide to advance, I've learned here. But when I'm thinking about my definition of Conjugate, how I like to define it is we're using various exercises to accomplish a singular goal and using various loading ranges that fit that exercise, which is going to piss off the nerds a little bit when I say that, because saying that is kind of defining Conjugate concurrent, which I'm not going to get into the weeds there on all that. I'm defining Conjugate based on how most people think about it, how I think about it, without having to over nerd it. So all we really need to be thinking about, if we're not trying to over nerd it, is that when we're doing Conjugate, we just need to be touching something heavy enough to give us a stimulus that will translate to the platform. We need to be doing something fast enough that will give us some explosivity as well as some practice under the barbell. And we need to do stuff that's going to get us jacked, plus maybe a few other things depending on where the lifter is and what they need to be focusing on at the given time. And when we're doing all of that, we need to be trying to do our best to pick the best option that we can for each exercise that we are running. So when we're trying to pick the best exercise for each option that we're running, how are we going to do that? Well, we just need to know what the lifter needs. And in order to know what the lifter needs, we need to find the constraint on their lift, which is basically asking, like, what is the biggest thing that is holding them back in that moment? Because if the lift is going to shit, like, there might be a lot of things going to shit on that lift if a guy is really breaking down, but it's usually one pretty easy lever to pull that we can solve to make better progress. And then once we find that lever to pull that we're going to then execute on, we just need to kind of keep on that path until the needs change. And we'll know the needs change if the lift starts going to shit again, or they stall out, or things aren't going the way that we expect. And what I'm talking about with that is we want to have a degree of specificity to the lifter's needs. And the problem with Conjugate, or the argument against Conjugate, is that everyone wants to say that, oh, it's not specific because we aren't just doing combination SBD. But specificity, it's not just whether or not a lift looks like SBD, because there's so much more to it, because the full picture is a matter of what does your lift need, and then how can we target that need. So if you have a lift that is breaking down for reason XYZ, just doing more comp squat, if that reason XYZ isn't improving, that just doing comp squat isn't going to be the most specific to your needs in that given moment. So we need to look a little bit deeper in trying to figure out what we actually do need to be working to build in order to solve the problem as quickly as possible. And when we're thinking about what is going to make a lift more specific, well, we just need to find the exercise that builds our comp lifts the best that we can. And myself, for my last meet prep that I did, like it was total dog shit on my squats for the vast majority of the meet prep. Like losing the weight that I did, it made it so just, it felt foreign. Everything felt wrong. My comp squat was so unproductive just because I'm someone that's capable of, squatting close to 800 in sleeves, but I was like dying with 500 pounds just because I was so unfamiliar with my groove. And the only reason that worked out is because I recognized that my comp squat, I still needed the practice training my comp squat, but I also recognized that my comp squat wasn't doing shit in terms of loading or building strength because I was so load limited due to my just lack of technical proficiency with being a skinny guy for the first time in 10 years. So what I did to solve that is I just made sure that my hack squats where technique groove was not a limiting factor at all. I made sure those were cranked as heavy as I possibly could. And I made sure I was trying to hold on to as much hack squat strength as I could, made sure I was trying to make my hack squats as strong as possible. And it took me until it was like full on panic mode at the end of the meet prep because the comp squats were so rough. But I went from, dying with 660 at about 5, 6 weeks out to being able to then kind of figure out the technique at the very last second. I was a little bit nervous because it was so bad at the end, but once I figured out the technical thing, because my hack squats were cranked, it let me hit a PR on the platform, and that wouldn't have happened had I just focused on SBD. The technique issue might have been solved sooner if I just focused on SBD, but if I didn't have the strength base and I let the strength fall, I wouldn't have been able to do what I was able to do. And when we're thinking about the needs, what a lifter is missing, the thing that I like to use is Dave Tate's idea that a miss or sticking point can be mental, physical, or technical. And the mental side of things, that isn't just a matter of focus, that isn't a matter of hype, that isn't a matter of what you're thinking about when you're on the bar. We also need to think about how you are thinking about training, because one of the big things that I've run into more and more and more is we'll have guys thinking that they are pushing the accessories hard, but then you look at how they're doing the accessories, they're going to like an RPE 4 and just mailing it in, and it's not going to do what we need. We also might have guys that are thinking themselves into thinking that they can't make progress because they've been told that leverages suck. And like Keelan's my prime example for that. Like every time I have someone on my AMAs asking about, what do I do if I can't squat because I'm tall? And I'm going to just send him a video of him squatting damn near 800 pounds. It would have been better if he did squat 800 pounds on the weekend, but we'll wait for that for a little bit longer. But again, like how it's not just what you're thinking during the lift from the mental side, it's also what you're telling yourself. And if that is something that is holding you back, all we need to really do is just work on trying to break down those limiting thoughts, because what do you believe about training, how you approach training is going to dictate how the training actually works for you. Now, on the physical side, that one's a little bit easier because if there is a blatant weak body part limiting lift, it's pretty easy to be like, okay, that thing is the thing that we need to work on if we know how to look at what is actually limiting the lift. And we're going to get into that in a few minutes. And we also need to think about, does our technique just suck and are we putting ourselves in a shitty leverage position? Pointing at Evan. We're getting to work on it. What's funny too is like, I know Keelan's yelling at all the shit that I yelled at Evan for on the weekend, but sometimes it just takes a little bit of extra voice to reinforce it. I also had a 2 board out and was going to smack him with it if he didn't get his shit together. But when I was introduced to the whole Dave's mental, physical, technical standpoint, what I thought it looked like was a pretty even Venn diagram with a little bit of overlap in the middle. And the reason I kind of thought that is that if you do have a shitty position, a weak point might get more exposed. So it could be both technical, could be both physical. If you're losing position because you aren't strong enough to maintain it, again, it could be a bit technical, a bit physical. And a weak point could be also exposed because you're just thinking too much going to the bar, or you're not thinking enough and you're forgetting about it. But what I realized kind of as I move further into this is that the Venn diagram actually looks a little bit more like this, with a way bigger span of physical, because the physical side is going to underpin a lot of the mental and the technical issues. Because again, even with the best intent, technique is going to be limited by your strength in order to hold that position. So if we have a technical breakdown, I do want to focus on the strength side first. Obviously, I'm still cueing, I'm still coaching technique, but if we select exercises that are going to reinforce the technique that I want, or reinforce the skill that we need to display under the barbell, that is going to help us better than just saying squat the dowel rod 100 times. And like, I still do go for that for a lot of guys that have walkout issues, as I'll say, like, practice mock walkouts with the dowel rod. But if we can get strong enough, get better at behind the neck pull downs, get better at raising T-spine, get better at setting abs with a raised T-spine, that is going to be much more effective at completing the picture when we do have 500-600 pounds on our back. And if it is a confidence issue, a lot of the time with confidence issues is we just need proof that we can do the thing. And how do we prove to ourselves that we can do the thing? We just get stronger so we have that proof to show ourselves that we actually can lift that weight. So when I'm coaching, and online especially, just because I can't be physically poking and prodding like I did with Evan the other day, the biggest focus is the strength side, just because that is the biggest thing that I can have influence on with programming. And again, we're talking about technique, we're talking about cues, but when you're not there live, strength is going to be the easiest lever to pull. And if we do the strength side of things right, we can make those cues much, much more easily reinforced when the lifter is actually under the barbell. So when we are looking at weak points, when we're looking at breakdown, well, we just need to look at what is breaking down and why. Because even if it is a skill position issue, not a pure strength, again, getting stronger at the exercises that will help reinforce the skill, help reinforce the position, is going to help us. And the first thing I'm going to do with that is I am going to rule out the low-hanging fruits, because if setup, brace, tightness, if all of that sucks, it's going to be really, really, really hard to get a true assessment on where the weak point actually is. And if the setup around the lift, again, like how they're setting the J hooks, how they're positioned on the bench, where their feet are under the mono, like that is also going to be in the way of showing whether or not it actually is a strength issue. So we're going to focus on that first, and I'm going to use a pretty recent example for that. And hopefully the video actually plays, because I got Evan's squats from Sunday on here, which was a pretty neat thing. In the vlog, I kind of like made the title a little bit, oh, it's playing. But look at how much hip shift, but you can see the shift that's happening with one plate. Now, with the video actually plays, basically all I did with Evan is I didn't even see the shift when I was actually in person, because I was beside him the whole time trying to pay attention to making sure the bar got back in the rack and whatnot. But I could tell that his brace was jacked up. I could tell that his pick was jacked up. So all we talked about was, number one, making sure that he wasn't spining the unrack, because he was basically had his legs set where they were going to be, and he was just kind of extending the spine and losing his brace to clear the hooks, and then he'd squat and everything would be all loosey-goosey, shifty, wobbly, not very good. Then looking here, we got more glutes into the pick. We got him to actually get close to a locked knee, and we made sure that his elbows were shoved forward. And just doing that off the pick made sure that he wasn't struggling to collect it when it came time to squat. And the shift got like worlds cleaner without even needing to worry about the shift. And obviously there is some underlying hip rotation stuff that I'm going to talk to him about later, but that's going to be another easy fix that we can do if we do kind of get the right stuff going to address those things. And Keelan was talking about it. He's someone that does over prep the shit out of everything. So it might even be just a matter of toning down the amount of prep work and just making sure, instead of just throwing shit at the wall, hoping some stuff sticks, it's just throwing the right shit that will stick to the wall so it actually does stick and get going. But if we're going to figure out like what is going on for someone that isn't just doing just a pure setup issue where we can make big changes right away, what we need to do is identify what's going on with the breakdown, and then look at what else is changing shape as that breakdown happens. Because the thing that's actually changing shape during the lift, it's often said that like that thing is the weak body part, but more often than not, it's something else that the thing is changing shape to work around. And that's why so many people get stuck chasing the tails with weak points, because, you know, we see a rounded back deadlift. It's so easy to say they're rounding because their back is weak, but a lot of times the back is rounding to put something in a better position so that the thing that needed to move with that rounded back is able to have an easier time getting through, and that just looks like it's a nasty rounded back. So what we need to be looking at is basically during a lift, everything should stay the same shape. Like my biggest principle when it comes to coaching the lifts is I don't want anything moving that does not need to move. But if something weird does happen, if something weird is going on, what we need to look at is what is kind of squirming around. Because if everything's moving uniformly, nothing's moving that doesn't have to, the muscles that are going to be moving the bar are going to be contracting at a relatively similar rate. If we have breakdown, that basically tells us that something that should be contracting is getting longer through that breakdown. And on the other side of it, something that should also be contracting is just able to contract much easier due to the other muscle group that is getting longer. And like the example that I like to talk about with this is if we have someone that's tucked in the bottom of the bench and their elbows are flinging way out, well, what's happening is as the elbows spling out, the sternal head of the pec is going to have to get longer. And when that sternal head of the pec gets longer, the elbow flings out, the clavicular head of the pec is getting a lot shorter. So when that is happening, the lengthening muscle, the sternal head of the pec, is going to be put in a position where it is going to be forced to do more work. And that clavicular pec is going to be put in a position where it isn't having to do as much work to then drive through because it doesn't have very good leverage here. So we're going away from a weaker clavicular pec in this position because the clavicular pec isn't strong enough to press out from here to a position where the lifter sternal pec is able to take over and make up for it, so the clavicular pec does not have to work. And bottom line, when something's changing shape, if we're seeing that, again, the back is running a deadlift, the back erectors, they're getting longer so that something else, whether it be the glutes, whether it be the quads, can get through easier. So it's not going to be a matter of just saying, oh, they need a stronger back, they need to do more stiff legs. We need to be looking at what is happening at the hips and what is happening at the knees that is forcing that back to round to make up for the hips or the knees. And another fun, oh, I was looking at the wrong slide. But the big thing we need to be looking at is what is breaking down, what is going to be loaded more with that breakdown, and then what is going to be loaded less and why. Because if we can figure those things out, we can know what to do about it. And again, waiting for the internet to kick in for this video to play, but this is me when I did not know what was going on with my deadlift. Is it going to play? Oh, we're playing. Okay, sick. Almost. Apologize for the technical difficulties. It wouldn't be one of me presenting if there wasn't technical difficulties, but check out what happens at that miss point. So anyone that hasn't heard me talk about this before, what do you think is going on? No one wants to speak up? Yeah. Well, not quite. Not quite. So as those knees go forward, what's getting longer? So the knees to bend more. Pardon? So basically, so like knees are bending more. So if it needs to bend more, front side has to get longer, quads have to lengthen. As those knees are bending more, it's letting the hamstring short. So basically, I'm trying to bend the knees more in an effort to let the hamstring shorten so that I have a chance at fighting through. And obviously with the chain weight, because the chain ramps up, I couldn't fight through it. But knees going onto the bar at a low point of the deadlift, so like right above the knee, is usually going to be characteristic of hamstrings. If the knees are going under the bar higher up, it's going to be more of like, if we're up here and the knees are going under the bar, that's going to be more glutes can't finish through. So we're going to shove knees under to let glutes get through so we can get up. And that's just due to where the hamstrings have more leverage compared to the glutes. So the hamstrings have better leverage than glutes to lower down. So it's going to be a hamstring issue if it happens lower down. It's going to be a butt cheek issue if it happens higher up. And solving this problem, again, like I was told the same thing over and over again, where it was just quads, it was just quads, it was just quads. I was coming off of a quad tear, so it kind of made sense. But as I was coming back from that quad tear, I was also not doing a shit ton of hamstring work because I was so focused on trying to get that quad back. So I just had a massive hole in my hamstrings. And what fixed this over time was just making sure that I got really freaking good at Nordic curls. And that's what finally let me be able to get through the mid-range without needing to shove under. And I'm actually currently struggling with that a little bit right now because since switching gyms over to the Realm, I didn't have a Nordic curl for a very long time. And I was doing a lot of glute work and then the hamstring weakness started to show up. So we're back to trying to work on that, but that kind of goes back to the whole weak points will shift over time based on training, based on what's going on, and just a matter of being able to recognize what is going on so we can correct it. Now, when it comes to fixing deficiency, we got to go back to the definition of conjugate that we said at the beginning, because we need to then figure out what is the best exercise that will target a primary deficiency and then pair them with loading parameters that will best fit that exercise. And yeah, like with the hamstring thing with me, like obviously I needed more hamstring work, but if I was just to say like, oh, the solution is going to be doing max effort leg curls, that wouldn't be very productive because a max effort leg curl isn't going to be very good for building the ham strength that I needed, because a leg curl isn't favorable to doing max effort singles, but a leg curl could be really valuable for sets of, 10, 12, 15, 20, just because of the strength curve of the movement. So there probably is something we could be doing better than just, maxing out on the single joint isolation. So we need to fill in that gap. And this is where I'm going to introduce one of my favorite things ever, which is the loading pyramid. And this is kind of how I conceptualize both the base and the peak of conjugate. So the bigger the base of the pyramid is, the taller we can build the peak, and the base is going to be what we're doing with our accessories. Now, above the accessories is going to be our rep effort and our secondaries, which are going to be bigger barbell movements that are going to try to get those accessories to then translate into our speed work and our max effort movements. Now, the point of speed work being a little bit higher up, we're not really doing a whole lot of building with the speed work. We're more trying to dial in the groove and dial in our ability to really snap into a bar as hard as possible. And then our max effort work that we're doing is going to be bigger barbell work done for lower reps. And the only goal of max effort is to then see how well everything underneath it is working. The goal of max effort is not to max out, even though it's in the name. The goal of max effort is just to see how well stuff is holding together, because if we know that stuff is holding together, then we know that what we're doing underneath is working, and all we need to do is just keep what we're doing underneath working. And the only secret to being the best lifter you can be is falling in love with the kind of work that you need to be doing, and that is why lifters on the team are stacking PRs and 9 for 9 meet days. The team is going to give you sustainable programming that you will enjoy, that makes sure that you are doing the right work, sent straight to a super easy to use app on your phone. You're going to be getting same-day coaching on every single lift that you post directly from me, plus you'll have the whole community there to support you along the way. And all of it is at a price that cannot be beat. Right now, we've even got a 7-day free trial, so you can sign up at no risk at all. So if you're serious about leveling up your progress, hit the link and come see what the team is all about.